delighted to be here, to be free.
We're nervous.
To be home. After 50 days in Tora prison, 5 days not being able to fly out of Cairo.
Mr. Greyson, did your sexuality ever come up? Was that ever an issue?
Thanks. Yeah.
Hi, this is Rob Salerno. I'm reporting for Daily Extra, and I'm here with activist and artist and filmmaker John Greyson. Now, before you left instructions with your partner that if you were to get in trouble, to keep your sexuality out of the media. But like you said, you know, Google your name and your entire history comes up. Why do you think it was important to keep your sexuality out of the press, the media?
It wasn't in our case. Well, I mean, there wasn't that instruction. The whole we were en route to Gaza, not to Egypt, and so our whole focus was just about trying to our focus from the start was just trying to get to Gaza, and trying to do the work there in Gaza. Stephen made the call, my partner Stephen made the call to keep my sexuality out of the public frame. Tarek and I weren't convinced by that. At points when the prosecutor would accuse us of being Hamas agents, we felt, well, maybe this would be actually a defense strategy. Mm-hmm. You know, surely Hamas can do better than a queer experimental filmmaker from Toronto who doesn't speak Arabic. Like, come on, Hamas isn't that desperate. So there was, we kept up an active debate with our lawyers, with the consul staff who were really incredible in terms of trying to give us support. In the end, the advice we got was the prosecutor will just twist it and use it. They'll turn it into, you've come to recruit the pure youth of Egypt, etc. They'd do anything to exploit a headline, even in the absolute absence of logic. And given that the charges we were threatened with were already so ludicrous, it actually seemed like there was a scenario where they could also exploit my sexuality if they chose. And then there was also just the practical worry of danger from the guards. We'd already been beaten very badly. Do we really want to wave that flag in their faces, right, given the subculture of the guards in this pretty awful prison?
That said, you know, your partner was referred to as your friend in the Globe and Mail, even Extra. You know, we removed a line in an interview with your friend Elle Flanders, referring to your sexual orientation. It was a tough call to make that. But I mean, how does that make you feel after, you know, being so long out and proud and activist, that, you know, to kind of be forced in the closet that way?
Well, there's all sorts of places I go back in the closet. Like you know, often riding the TTC, I don't, funnily enough, declare my sexuality. If I was in Millhaven, I don't think I'd be out leading the Millhaven Gay Pride Parade or mobilizing the gay volleyball tournament. All of us make choices, make judgment calls in terms of sexuality, and we have the privilege of being able to step inside or outside potentially discriminatory, potentially bigoted situations, and navigate and negotiate. And I was having dinner with some trans friends the other night who were talking about that lack of navigability, that not being able to pass, and therefore always having to navigate that sort of potential danger, potential threat, or just potential response. So we all make those judgment calls often, daily. In this case, you know, as I said, Tarek and I kept up an active debate around, would this be smart or not? Would it be something to help me get free? From the point of view of Stephen and everyone working so hard here, from our point of view in Cairo, in Tora prison, the goal was always, we have to get out. Everything else is secondary to, we have to get out.
you know, John Baird has been identified as gay by several people, some media outlets, including this one.
Have you slept with him?
I
haven't
slept with him.
So I don't know.
I have. I'm not going to say anymore. But you know, as someone who has had to or has found himself in a situation where you've had to conceal your own sexuality, can you understand where that's coming from? Do you see that as a legitimate choice?
So you're comparing Parliament to an Egyptian prison. That's intriguing.
No, but
no,
I mean, like,
I think
on the TTC in Millhaven, in these other places, you also operate.
And I think John Baird has every opportunity as a public figure to come out, and it's very strange in this day and age for him not to, if in fact,
if he is.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's up to him to say so. And it's head scratching that in this day and age, in this, you know, within that government, for all their so-called protestations around human rights, he would not feel, he would not feel that's appropriate. And it's completely appropriate given that he has to speak out publicly on human rights and you know, frame the context of his work in that context.
But do you think it would be difficult for a Minister of Foreign Affairs if it was an out gay man who was lobbying, you know, the Egyptian government for your release? Do you think that might compromise his ability to do that theoretically, if he was? It's an interesting speculation, because that's the argument of the closet all the time is, oh, I'll be more effective, et cetera, et cetera. And we've seen that change over the past couple decades in particular, where one by one those sort of truisms have been knocked down. I don't, I think our sexualities are all very slippery, and so the idea that it's a singular identity that can be claimed and you know that can be claimed and fixed on people. And I mean, you know, I've spent my entire life fighting that notion, that rigid notion of sexuality, because I think our fight is our you know, queer activism is mobilized by the conviction that sexuality is fluid, and we have to fight for a society where fluidity is what fluidity brings with it, the freedom. Mm-hmm. That said, there's all sorts of reasons why coming out in particular moments in particular places does have a huge impact. You know, I think, you know, we've just been through the Sochi Olympics, and we saw everyone suddenly discovering that you know, their anti-homophobic credentials are within organized sports, and it's sort of like, wow, folks. But it is going to be that turning point, pre-Sochi, post-Sochi, in terms of being queer in organized sports and queer discourses and anti-homophobic discourses in organized sports. But there's hypocrisies built in too. But you know, it became a very easy crowd sport, Sochi bashing. So there was a sort of dumbing down, and so often gay politics becomes a dumbed down version, a simplification, a simplified version. And so by the same token, I think formulas or questions around Baird's sexuality need a much more nuanced context. Were there other, like, gay prisoners, or were any of your fellow prisoners gay, or men who have sex with men? Or
in our cell, no. Certainly in the prison, I mean, we're talking about the prison, and men having sex with men goes on everywhere. This is a cell where it's practically impossible. There's 38 of us crammed into 10 meters by 3 meters, so nothing was going on anywhere. There was absolute zero privacy. And I think, in fact, there was a practicality to there weren't even sexualized jokes. I assumed a culture of men would produce homophobic banter or sex banter, or, you know, just the joking that goes on to pass time. And in fact, there was nothing. And Part of it had to do with everyone except myself was observant and praying 3 times a day. And that brought a particular, I think, culture to the cell. Also, it was cross-generational, so it was, in some cases, fathers and their sons locked up together, or uncles or nephews, or you know, there were lots of family ties through the group of 38. And so again, just preserving the boundaries, as it were. And really, practically, when you're lying down and trying to sleep and there's no way you're not touching somebody, it actually, boundaries become psychic boundaries.
So did any of your fellow prisoners know that you were gay?
The word was never said. Indirectly, we think, sure. Tarek and I would talk about it all the time, like, do you think Ahmed knows, or do you think Masri knows, and you know, he was able to give me great insight into the way sexuality is spoken about, described, thought about in Arab culture in general and Egyptian culture in particular. He spent time in Cairo on his way to Gaza. His feeling was that these are an internet-savvy group of prisoners. Their families were online. We had one prisoner come back from a family visit saying, "I'm mad at you guys. My son came to visit and all he does is spend the entire half hour talking about Free Tarek and John campaign, Free Tarek and John campaign." And you know, there was real fascination on the part of the families around the efforts that were coming from Canada to get us free.